It's been quite a while here since any of us have stood up, and I just found out that when you stand up, it really feels pretty good. So I invite you all to stand up just for 30 seconds. Do a little exercise. Get the blood rolling. Okay. I too want to thank Luke and the organizers and actually all of you for coming, including, and this betrays my experience as a Soviet specialist, including those representatives of the state security apparatus. So if there are any folks from the FBI here, or the NSA, or the CIA, or NYPD intelligence section, you're welcome as well. Please stand up and be recognized. As some of you know, I'm a New Yorker. Spent my first 9 months in the Bronx and then the next 22 and a half years after I was born. I welcome very much the chance to get out of the boondocks on the Potomac that is called Washington and come back home where things really buzz and people really live. Most people. Now, this evening I think we have all experienced and detected a profound sadness. And some of us, particularly perhaps those who are Irish, me, a profound anger. And both, I would suggest, are entirely appropriate given the circumstances. But there's a danger for us, and particularly I'm speaking out of my Irish heritage. A danger about anger. Let me give you an example. A good friend of mine was beat up in an alley up in the Bronx just last month. That's all right, it was his own fault. You see, he saw two of his Irish countrymen fist fighting to beat the band in an alleyway, and he stopped and he looked for 30 seconds and he says, "Sirs, is this a private quarrel, or will you let me in?" I think there's something to be said for attempts at humor, feeble though they be, as you've just noticed. And so I have a slew of good news, bad news things for you this evening. The first one goes back to the year 337 BC, which happens to be the same year that Alexander the Great tried to conquer Afghanistan. And when he got in there, a bunch of militants started taking a big toll on his troops. Then he looked up at the mountains. He changed his mind. He said, "Let's go back to Asia Minor to where I know what I'm doing." You know, that's incidentally why they call Alexander the Great. He changed his mind. Okay. Anyhow, it was the same year, 337, and there was this very large Roman trireme, you know, with the 3 rows of oars in the hot day sun in the Mediterranean, and the slaves are powering this thing with their own muscle power. And finally, the foreman says, "All right, we have a little break for an announcement. I got some good news and I got some bad news." And they won't stop. He said, "The good news is we have an extra measure of rum tonight at dinner." No, we felt pretty good about that. And then they stopped. It was a bad news. He says, "Well, the bad news is the captain, he wants to go water skiing." Okay, slightly less jocular. Here's a bad news and a good news one for you. The bad news is that they really hate us. They really hate us. Now, let me be a little tongue-in-cheek here and say, well, if they really hate us for our freedoms, Well, they should hate us a lot less these days because we're losing all our freedoms. And so that could be good news. You got to gild the lily here. Of course, freedoms. You know, Osama bin Laden said years before 9/11, what I'd really like to see is the United States attack, occupy an oil-rich Muslim nation. And so what do? Well, the two of them, Iraq and Afghanistan. So they hate us for good reason. They also hate us for the things we do, like the fellow named Albert that Amy Goodman mentioned 3 days ago on her morning program. Anybody listen to Amy Goodman? Good, all right. Well, Albert was the first name of one of those CIA guys or contractors, I don't know which, who had this power drill and put it on and used it on these prisoners. He didn't get into his brain, he just scared the daylights out of him, okay? Well, that's beyond the pale, folks. That doesn't wash, okay? Now, the good news is that he was stopped and that an investigation is taking place. The bad news is that because a fellow named Mukasey, who I think comes from around here, appointed a fellow named John Durham to investigate this activity, and the bad news is it's been 2.5 years and nothing has happened. More bad news, Albert is back working for the CIA on contract. Good news, I'm told that his supervisor has the key to the power cord. So if they get approval by headquarters, he'll get the key. Now, this next one is sort of a mixed bad news, good news for you all to decide whether it's bad news or good news. And apologies to any people from the FBI sitting in the back there. I see here's one that I recognize. Okay, the Associated Press, January 10. Telephone companies have cut off FBI wiretaps used to eavesdrop on suspected criminals because of the Bureau's repeated failures to pay their phone bills on time. That's the good news. We quote, Inspector General Glenn Fine. We also found that late payments have resulted in telecommunications carriers actually disconnecting phone lines established to deliver surveillance results to the FBI, resulting in lost evidence. Good news, bad news. An assistant FBI director said, we're working to fix the problem. Mike German, good friend of Colleen's and mine, who works with us in Veteran Intelligence Professionals for Sanity, and now as a lawyer with the ACLU, he commented, you know, it's really curious. It seems that the telecommunications companies, they claim to be really good patriots when they get paid by the government to spy on us without warrants. But when the government falls behind on its bills, it pulls the plug. Great stuff. Very big patriots. Well, let me finish up here because I don't want to keep you any longer than need be. I would simply say that there's a real reason for hope here, and I'm not making it up, because I'm standing out and looking at a bunch of people who are committed to finding truth and doing justice, and that's what the whole deal is all about. I would ask you to just take 1 second, you don't have to stand up, just look around you. Look around you at who's sitting behind you, who's sitting to the side of you. Go ahead, take 5 seconds to do that. Cesar Chavez used to always say, always, there are enough of us. But if we limit ourselves to speech making, writing articles, that's not enough. What we need is action, and this is an action-oriented group of people. We need to be, as our first speaker said, proactive, nonviolent. We have a critical mass here, folks. Let's go and do it. Thank you very much.